Beyond Clean offers a creative look into the inner workings of a healthcare industry committed to getting it right every instrument, every time. Join us every week as we explore the hidden world of one of the most important aspects of safe surgical care. And now your hosts, Hank Balch, Michael Matthews, and Justin Poulin.
This week on Beyond Clean, we speak with Bert Dommerholt, CEO at DOVIDEQ Medical. Bert is an experienced entrepreneur with a demonstrated history of working in the medical device industry for over 25 years. He loves to connect with people and find new ways to support customer needs. And the product we're going to talk about in this week's episode of Beyond Clean is the scope control, and we'll also touch upon quality metrics. But Mike, I'm really excited because this is brand new, I would say, for the most part, in the United States, and we have some friends of the show that have implemented this technology, including Sean Flynn, who has been our only repeat guest on the show to date. And I'll also say, just to prep people, that Bert sounds a whole lot like Pavel de Sternberg Stoyalovsky, who was a previous guest on the show as well, also from overseas and a manufacturer himself. And so I think that everybody will enjoy another overseas guest on this episode of Beyond Clean.
Yeah, Justin, I remember seeing scope control for the first time 2 years ago at the Isham show in San Antonio, just being absolutely blown away. I think I was with Hank actually when we saw that, and first thing I said when I walked away was, I want one of those things, because what it's capable of doing is really just pretty astounding. And it's one of those things you just look at and you see it and you say, you know, that's the future. That's what we need to be heading towards. So the chance to sit down and talk to Bert is extremely exciting.
Yeah, I'm interested in hearing how they gathered the data, because I know it's not always easily accessible. So we'll be certain to ask him that question in this episode. Beyond Clean. Joining us now is Bert Dommerholt, CEO at DOVIDEQ Medical, and we're going to talk about quality assurance with rigid scopes, both delivery upon new and upon repair, and really defining quality in an arena that's very difficult to define quality because the measurement or the specifications aren't always readily available. So, Bert, we're very excited to have you on this episode of Beyond Clean, and I wanted to thank you formally for joining us.
Thanks, Jen. I'm very pleased to be in your show.
So why don't we start? We'll just get it going, talking about quality in terms of rigid scopes. How do you define it, and why specifically does it matter so much to patient safety?
Quality of scopes is basically fit for use in the operating theater. So there are no delays over there, which we see quite a lot. And technically speaking, quality is sufficient light into the patient, sufficient light coming back through the optical system of the scope with a good and sharp quality. And these aspects are not given by the OEMs. They just talk about the length, the diameter, and the viewing angle of the scope, but nothing about the technical part of it. Delays in the operating theater did lead to an invitation from a Dutch hospital and said, "Hey, Bert, come by for a cup of coffee." Because on an average of 4%, they had delays due to insufficient scopes, situation that result into patient risk and high cost. And we know also that around 15% of all scopes are not tight anymore, meaning there can be moisture and other unwanted things inside. So that's basically the quality topic.
So Bert, following up on that, if you have scopes then that have questionable quality, if it's, moisture getting in for whatever reason, or if it's a loss of the angle of vision or the light transmittance, if those issues are happening, then why is it important to be able to trace and to monitor the transparency of your inventory in a department like this? Or in other words, why is the status quo in most hospitals not enough when it comes to tracking scope quality?
We get loads of complaints from hospitals, and wherever we show our system, it is an eye-opener for them. Currently, scopes are tested by human eye, just looking through it. Most of the aspects of a scope can't be judged by the human eye. Moisture inside is very difficult to detect. And a poor scope, if we let the average operator to judge, one has the idea it's perfect, the other has an idea it's bad. Operating theater, and most hospitals don't have any clue how many scopes they have, where they are, how often they are used, what the status is, what the cost per operation is. And using a tool like the scope control change it dramatically. And there's also no check on deliveries of new scopes, on repairs. Often they're not good enough for usage. And all these topics are solved by using product as a scope control. Further, you have a proof towards your, always there are some issues between the Central Sterilization Department and the operating theater. Is the scope good? Did it break somewhere and stuff? So using a piece of technology does get rid of all those subjective things.
So, Bert, what are really the options that are available to hospitals to begin doing some of these quality assurance checks, to do the traceability, all that sort of stuff? Is there something, what are those options on the market right now?
Nothing currently. As I said earlier, the initiative was taken by me and our CTO, Menno, to start this, because there's just nothing on the market which is able to test scopes in the workflow of an hospital, because there's very poor the unit. Every time a scope is coming back from an operating theater, it should be tested, and you would need a very simple unit to operate, which is scope control is. Anybody can work with it within a couple of minutes.
So speaking of scope control, you've referenced it a couple of times here, Bert, and I know obviously this is your experience and your offering into this industry for how to tackle these quality measurement issues. Can you go over with the audience what scope control is and what it can do and measure the human eye an individual cannot do?
Yeah, for sure. It's a tricky device because it should be able to measure very small scopes up till big scope for, let's say, big patients. The unit is placed in the Central Sterilization Department. So every time the scope is coming back from the operating theater, it will be cleaned and disinfected, and then it should be measured. If the measurement is okay, the scope can go through the sterilization process back to the OR. If not, it should be taken out for exchange or a repair. We measure on 6 different parameters: the viewing angle and opening angle, the light throughput through the lenses, the light throughput through the fibers. We measure the focus, or the image sharpness, and the discoloration, and the well-known yellowish image is also tested. And next to that, we make pictures from the internal of the scope. And if the system does see contrast in the image, it will store the image. So you can see on these images broken lenses and moisture inside and particles and that stuff. So scope control does give an objective and neutral advice in the daily routine to use the scope again or not. And the human eye is not able to do that. We have seen many discussions between professionals using the same scope, and we avoid that by using such a system. And it's really a track and trace system as well. So you know how many scopes you have in-house and how their performance is.
So, Bert, we talked about it earlier as we were kind of teeing up the interview, just about the fact that the manufacturer's specifications, they're not exactly making them readily available. So as you're kind of building the scope control, can you walk us through the process of gathering that information and how you set sort of your metrics for a pass or a fail on the different measurements that you do and how you establish tolerances?
Yes, of course we can. This was really the biggest challenge we had from the beginning. And there are two factors in a scope which are important to know. The first factor is how good can a scope be if you purchase it from an OEM. And that part is not, in the end, the most difficult thing to find by us. You just take a handful or probably more new scopes we measure all over in the world where scope control is used. And that information is sent to our cloud platform, where every user has entrance and is able to look at his own scopes. And so out of new scopes, we make a sort of an average, which we call 100%. So the most of the measurements are, let's say, relative measurements. We're starting with 100% and going down to a certain percentage where the surgeon would not be happy anymore. Just the viewing angle and the opening angle are giving in degrees. So the other factor is fit for use, and that is a level big health from a university hospital in the Netherlands. So we had a cooperation a while back with them, and they tested thousands and thousands of scopes together with some other hospitals they cooperated with. And after many months of testing loads of scopes, and with all the feedback they get from their operating theaters, there the surgeon says, okay, I've seen this and this on that scope. And that did lead to a norm we call the University Utrecht norm, which is standardly used in scope control. It's an opinion from the daily user of the scopes, fit for use or not.
You know, knowing the way that hospitals are, particularly with new technology and in areas like sterile processing, they tend to be, very resistant to anything that comes with a price tag. Can you help us sort of, make a business case to those who may be opposed to spending the money on something like scope control that basically says, how can rigid scope data and those metrics, how does it save the hospital money?
Yeah, in the being a little bit ignorant in the beginning, we thought that patient safety was the biggest issue in the operating theater. It seems to be a sort of a luxury problem. So we ended very quickly into the situation where we did know that 95% of all hospitals would buy a system if you can really prove that it saves more money than an investment does cost. So we have a business case where we enter the number of scopes in the hospital, the average delays they have, and so on. And this is a very simple Excel sheet every hospital can fill in. And we have concluded if a hospital has more than 70, 80 scopes in the daily use, it's already having a good return on investment. Next to that, there was an initiative from a public hospital in England a while back, and they had a scope control in there for a trial for a long period. And they've concluded themselves, without any, let's say, pre-knowledge from us, but they just worked on it and have concluded themselves that they would save £100,000 per year just related to removing all the delays in the operating theater. And that's much more than investment of the scope control is. So we have a very strong business case there. We can help the hospital getting it through their budgets.
So we mentioned a little bit, I think Justin asked a question on the metrics, from the original manufacturers of these scopes and knowing the specifications, or at least, building the benchmark like you described. Can you walk through the impact that scope control and other scope inspection technologies has had on these original equipment manufacturers and also third-party repair companies in terms of quality accountability for these scopes? Because I think you alluded to, Bert, in the past, if a customer has sent a scope out for repair, it comes back, and the assumption is it has been repaired, and there's really been no opportunity or tool out there to measure that repair, track and trace that repair to say it came back to us in a better way than it left us, or in the same way and the same quality that it was when we first purchased it. So how are you seeing this technology change those kinds of relationships in terms of repair accountability?
Yeah, there's quite an impact over there. It's a little bit funny now, but in the beginning, we were a tiny company from a very small country, the Netherlands, and all those big OEMs and also the bigger third-party companies were looking at us as, oh, you are strange people, testing our scopes and giving the hospitals the power to check on their quality. So in the beginning, actually, they didn't like us too much. This has dramatically changed over mainly the last year. We are more and more cooperating with the OEMs and the third parties in that matter. We just signed a contract with a big distributor of Karl Storz here in this area, and with another major one on which I'm not allowed to mention the name, but it's a big one. They sell our products now in what we call the Nordic territory, so Norway and Sweden and Finland. Because they can give a much better performance to us, their customer, and avoid any discussions. Did we the best quality ever, or didn't we? We had some examples not long ago in the US during a trial. The CSSD manager said, okay, I have 10 new scopes laying around here. Can you measure them? And I think half of them were faulty. So we see more of those people now, and also the third-party repair companies who have an extra challenge because often they can't get the original parts to repair scopes. In the beginning, if they start using scope control, they have a big challenge to get the quality on the right level. But after a couple of weeks or maybe months, they see that they can improve their performance towards their customers, the hospitals. So it has more impact even that we could have dreamt of in the beginning.
Bert, do you see a different level or type of adoption and involvement overseas versus in the United States? Is it more acceptable overseas than in the United States? Have you had more engagement? What's the general attitudes abroad?
We don't see really huge differences in the world. Currently, we are active, obviously, in the Netherlands because it's our home country, and in the surrounding area where we are quite successful. Since about 1.5 years, 2 years, we are quite active through a distributor in the US. Actually, that's a third-party repair company, Mobile Instruments, quite a big one. We see more or less the same questions and the same demands and the same remarks coming from the US. Probably you're even more strict on the cost aspects of scope control. But if we see that even the big chains of hospitals, and I don't dare to name them right now, but they are very open and willing to accept our technology and already using it. So it's more or less a bit the same in the world.
So then taking that and going down to, the front line where the actual, sterile processing technicians are doing this on the front lines, do you find that they are eager to accept this new technology, or is there some resistance? I can kind of picture technicians initially saying, it looks complex. I don't really want to mess with that too much, or it's going to take too much time. What's their acceptance level been towards scope control?
Great, really curious. They are keen to make a step forward, and then they see that it's so simple to use the unit as a scope control. For an average user, it's only a couple of minutes training, actually. So it's quite simple, and it's also fast. The handling time to test the scope is about 10-20 seconds maximum. The measurement does take a little bit longer, but you don't have to wait for it. So I think 98% of the people who see scope control for the first time, they are very, very enthusiastic. But then getting it through the budget, that is the challenge, and actually the only challenge. If it would be a low-cost unit, everybody would use it, I'm sure.
Well, if it was low cost, the problem is you get what you pay for, so you'll probably get a low quality, right?
That's fully true, and it's the return on investment, which in the end is important.
So, Bert, I do want to put you on the spot here. You know, there's a lot of excitement about the 2019 World Congress coming to the Netherlands, and as that being the home headquarters for your company, would there be opportunity for folks like the lowly Beyond Clean podcast crew to come visit the world headquarters once we make the trip over to the Netherlands for the World Congress?
Absolutely, absolutely. We will be there. So we will be presenting our products in the World Congress. And then if people later will come to the medical show in Germany, Düsseldorf, in November, that's another opportunity. There we are in Hall 10, in between all the OEMs and third-party scope manufacturers. So everybody's very, very welcome. It will be busy in our booth, but more people, more fun.
Awesome. Well, I will see you in 2019 then, for sure.
That sounds great, really. Now, if you allow me, I would like to make one more remark. Just in between sentences, it's mentioned. This is not about purely the hardware, the scope control itself. Belonging to that, we have the endoscope manager platform. So all the data is transported to that platform. This really gives a tool to the head of the CSSD, the technical guys, the purchasing departments, full control over your inventory. That is our goal.
Well, Bert, you have just an excellent product. I can see why the end users are excited to bring it to the table. And I think, obviously, the investment is worth the reward, so to speak, not only on patient safety, which was your reasoning for bringing it to the market, but the cost savings opportunity that comes from it, as you described, is an ROI that should be factored in when taking a look at implementing new technology like the scope control. So congratulations on bringing a much-needed tool to the market, and thank you again for coming on this episode of Beyond Clean.
Thank you, and was very pleased to have this chat with you on your show. Thanks a lot, and hope to see you in the future.
That was Bert Dommerholt, CEO at DOVIDEQ Medical. Hank, it's definitely a technology that we've seen some friends of the show utilize. I know everybody in sterile processing wants more data, more objective measurables, and this is just one device that's bringing that to the market. I can't wait until we extend it out to other types of technologies, but rigid scopes is a great place to start. It sounds like it's easy to use. I've never used it before, but we cannot ever express enough on this show how much more data we all want in the industry, and so here's another way to get it.
That's right, Justin. This kind of technology puts the tools and the power in the hand of the frontline technicians to put that quality stuff. Like we talked a little bit with Bert about the impact that has on their repair side, and of course he mentioned a couple of times throughout the interview the impact on the operating theater, also known as the operating room here in the U.S. But at the end of the day, it comes back to data and to power. And the power, for once, as you leverage technology like this, comes back to the sterile processing department. And really, I cannot be more excited about technologies like this that bring that power back home. And you mentioned, Justin, friends of the podcast have had this and used this. I've actually had the ability to have it in one of my departments as well, so I've seen it up close and personal, and I really think this is the future of sterile processing, items and equipment like this that bring the data in, bring automation in, so it takes it out of the realm of it depends on who's working today in terms of what quality you get. Once you have a computer in place that can measure and monitor, it's a game changer.
Absolutely. That's going to do it for this week's show. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing to Beyond Clean on iTunes or Stitcher, and now also on Google Play and Spotify. Simply search for Beyond Clean Podcast. We'd certainly appreciate a rating and a review. Your feedback is important to all of us at Beyond Clean, and if you have any topics that you'd like us to cover on a future episode, or if you'd like to share a picture anonymously on our Instagram page, just send an email to info@beyondclean.net. On behalf of Hank, Mike, and myself, thank you for listening to another edition of Beyond Clean.